My name is Ashley Ferraro. I teach math at West Springfield High School, specifically the new Algebra Functions and Data Analysis AFTA class, and Algebra 2 and Algebra 2 Honors. So our school is one-to-one. That's new this year, so every student has a laptop. My approach to teaching is to make it very student-centered, let my students be doing most of the math. I don't want to be the one that does the math in my math classroom. I've been using Mathspace predominantly for homework this year. Every single assignment pretty much for homework has been on Mathspace. We've also started using, or will start using Mathspace for a remediation type thing. Our students that have been struggling with past units, we're going to have them do Mathspace assignments in teacher presence. So during our cycle back period, our learning seminar, or after school, they'll be working on Mathspace, sort of these cumulative things to help get them back on track and get them back to a competitive place in our class. My favorite part about Mathspace has been that students actually have to get the correct answer on homework assignments, which sounds very silly, but one thing that has been sort of the growing pain this year is kids will say, I got it right, but Mathspace marked me wrong. And in fact, they did not get it right. It was, they, didn't read the question properly. The notation was something specific that they weren't doing, or they forgot something here or there. And so they think they're right, but they're not. And so this is sort of the first time, in 12 years of their schooling where they've had to do homework and actually get the answers correct, not just correct enough or correct enough in their book. And so it's really, really pushing them in a really good way. It's productive struggle, not the struggle that, gets really upsetting. One thing that I think is big with Mathspace is reading the question really carefully, and that's making students better at conceptual math, not just doing a process. Because I think back to worksheets we used to give where I would say, solve the quadratic, and then here's 20 problems like that for homework. Whereas now Mathspace will say, solve the quadratic for x, and they have to actually put it in, x equals blah, blah, blah. Or, solve this graphically. Just sort of the questions that Mathspace asks is in a way that students have to really think critically about what they need to do to solve the problem. They're not just doing this procedure over and over again, but they're doing a certain step to get to the next place. And so I think it's making them think a little bit deeper, especially my honors level students. We're really giving them those thinking type of questions and not just, do the same type of thing over and over again. And I think it's making them better mathematicians. So a couple of tips I have would be for homework, we usually do custom tasks, and we try to keep the minutes, like the time minutes down that Mathspace says. Another thing we've done is fast tracks for review. So I'll tell my students to go into specific subtopics in Mathspace and go do a fast track. And if you get through that whole thing, then you're probably ready for our quiz or test coming up on that topic. Because if Mathspace says you're good at all this stuff and you get that 100%, then they know that they're prepared. So it's a little bit of study skills for some of my students that want something really concrete like that. At the beginning of the year, we made our Mathspace worth a grade for homework. So not just, did you do it, but we set these boundaries, and we still have them for the most part. We sort of had to tweak them a little bit because it was really hard at the beginning of the year. So we found, slightly easier questions to start off the beginning of the year, get them used to that process. And then we've been able to add some of those deeper questions as the year has progressed. For the grading system, we did 75% plus. It goes into the grade book as a 4 out of 4 for the homework. Between a 50 and 75, I think we said was 3 out of 4. 30 to 50 was 2 out of 4. And then anything above like a 2%, we gave them a 1 out of 4. And so that at least got them to start it, and then we also allow for homework corrections. So some of our students, are upset that homework, which is a practice thing, is being marked as a grade. So what we've said is, okay, if you got a grade on Mathspace that you don't really like, you can do those questions that you got a yellow or a red on, do them on paper, prove that you understand how to do it, write your explanation of why you got it wrong the first time, and we'll give you that 4 out of 4. So it's not super penalizing students for the practice that we really want them to do. So they're still doing the practice. If they're getting the grade that they want, they're good with that. But if they need to do those corrections, they can still get, 100% on homework, because people really want to get 100% on their homework if they're doing their homework, right? So this is a way to get them back to that. I think they like that sometimes Mathspace is really challenging. I think a lot of especially our advanced students really appreciate that challenge. And then the tests seem, easier almost because they had those real thinker questions on their Mathspace. They like, I think, the change from last year to this year, the check circle system. They like this one better with the not filled in checks, because that makes a little more sense to them, and that they know that they're still correct, they're just not done, as opposed to the yellow where they're like, oh, but I'm not wrong. So they like that stuff with Mathspace. They like that they can give feedback. They like that they can tell me what's wrong with it and that I give Mathspace feedback, because then Mathspace has been fixing stuff as I've given the feedback. So they appreciate that. They feel like, we're this team that's trying to make this cool system. So they do appreciate that. And I've had a couple of kids say I really like Mathspace better than a worksheet, because you can see the progress you're making. It's not just doing the same thing over and over again and being like, okay, cool, I did it, that they actually have to accomplish something and get a score on something. They do appreciate that. A challenge I've had is the completion for some of my students that aren't usual homework doers. And the other challenge is just at the beginning of the year, getting them used to the fact that they need to get a certain score if they want to get a certain score on their homework. And that just sort of, growing pains with new technologies, new things in general. So that was one challenge, I would say. So the summary of Mathspace in general, I think my students are getting better at doing math just because they're being asked deep questions on their homework practice, as opposed to just rote procedural, do it over and over again until your brain explodes type of problems. And we're not just giving the same type of problem over and over again. We're giving those different levels of similar questions, asking it a different way, different kind of wording, so they really understand the concepts behind it.